Get the latest Impact podcast right into your inbox each week. Subscribe by entering your email address at impactpodcast.com to make sure you never miss an interview. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. I'm John Shigarian, and I'm so honored to have with us today Susan Uthayakumar. She is the Chief Energy and Sustainability Officer for Prologis. Welcome, Susan, to the Impact Podcast.
Thank you, John. It's really great to be here.
It's great to have you. We've never had Prologis on before. We've never had you on before. So before we get talking about all the great and impactful work you're doing with your colleagues at Prologis, can we talk a little bit about you, Susan? Where did you grow up and how did you get on this fascinating and impactful journey that you're on?
What a great question to start. So I was born in Sri Lanka, John, and I thought that that is where I would lead my life. And I guess sometimes things change. There was a civil war, and I and my family, we left the country and we moved to North America. But along the way, so that was an unplanned journey, I guess I would say. But along the way, I've also had a chance to live and work in different places. So I've lived and worked in Europe, I've lived in India, I've lived in Canada, and in the US. So it's kind of, I've had the privilege of enjoying so many different places, getting to know so many different people. And I would tell you that has really shaped who I am today.
You're a true global citizen. Where do you live today?
So today I live in the US and I have a global job. So I still travel quite a bit. And as you know, Prologis is in 20 countries and I do business in a number of them. So, I get to do and I get to enjoy my passion of meeting different people in different countries and doing business.
How old were you when you moved to North America from Sri Lanka?
So I was 11 years of age when I moved permanently. And I moved first to Canada. And then when I was a young adult, I moved to the US, to Chicago.
Got it. Wow. What a and like you said, you've lived all over the world. And what a rich experience. We don't know it as kids, but the ability and the opportunity to live in so many interesting places makes life so much richer.
Absolutely. And John, as part of this journey, you also get to see how people live, right? Not everyone has what we have in North America. And so you get to really see what people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And it gives you a reference point, as you take on challenges. There are people that have more challenges that they're dealing with that gives me that kind of tells me, well, just figure out what you need to do and move the ball forward.
Interesting. You just didn't go from high school and college to Prologis. You have a fascinating backstory. Talk a little bit about your formal education and then your work experience before joining Prologis.
Absolutely. So I started my university career at the University of Waterloo, where I completed my undergrad and a master's degree. And it is a fantastic university. There's a lot of smart people that go there. And I think that's where my love of learning started. And then I also, when I moved to the US, I decided that you should really go to a US institution as well, because, maybe teaching is different. So I went to Kellogg University for my executive MBA. But I am really a lifelong learner. So you see me working very closely with Stanford today, with MIT. You give me any opportunity to be in an institution, and I am there. And I'm really not doing another degree because my family has said they are not willing to share me anymore. But I really am a lifelong learner. So I engage very much with different institutions around the world.
When you were an undergraduate and even in your postgraduate work, were you studying sustainability, or were you studying other topics before you got into this field that you're in now?
You know what? I was in finance. I always had a love of engineering. This is the funniest story. So I wanted to do engineering. My father is an engineer, and he said, "Why would you want to do that?" So then, like very last minute, I changed into finance. And then look what I'm doing now. I've been in the engineering field, energy systems for the last 20 years. So it just kind of tells you that destiny is predetermined. You know what I mean? Even if you veer the course.
Why would your dad ask you that? You're his daughter. You're his daughter's. You're his. I mean, he's an engineer. It's in your DNA. Of course, you want to be an engineer.
Absolutely. I should ask him that question. I don't think he's ever given me an answer. So no, I studied finance, and I think when I went to university, John, I didn't really have a predetermined plan of what I was going to do. I was really good with numbers. Acquisition was interesting, valuations was interesting. So that's how I got into finance. Gave me a great base. I think everyone should learn finance at some point in their lives. And from there, I joined Deloitte. That was my first job. And I loved my career there. I loved my learning there. Just didn't want to make partners. So I thought, you know what? I should go and do something that I love. And remember, I said to you, I love working in different places. Right. So McCain Foods, which is the global leader in French fry manufacturing, was a client, and I had an opportunity to go work with them in corporate development. So then I was in, places like India, China, Turkey, developing. Wow. If McDonald's was there and they needed French fry supply chain, I was there trying to figure out, do you build a greenfield, or, how do you get them what they need? Loved that job. Met and married my husband, who was also at McCain. So I thought, it's time to make a change. And at that point, I've always wanted to work in the US. I always saw the US as a place of innovation and a place of where you can really drive what you wanted to do. So I wanted to have a chance to work in that country. I made the move to the US, and I started working with Schneider Electric, where I spent 17 years. And that is where I came across the energy space. I joined to drive acquisitions for North America, and I just loved the space of energy. So I then went on to do many different roles, including running countries and running different business lines, and then a division before moving to Prologis.
You were the CEO of Schneider Electric Canada, correct?
That's right. I was the CEO of Schneider Electric Canada, and then I ran the global division of sustainability. And so I came across sustainability and energy by accident. But it's a field that I love because really it's based on common sense, right? When you think about sustainability, what it is if you can use less material, less of anything, you consume less, and therefore you have less emissions, and you have less cost. And that concept just made sense to me. And what we were doing at Schneider was using data and intelligence, because a lot of the equipment that the company was manufacturing would measure the consumption of the different materials or how a plant is operating that will lead to better decisions. And that led to that company really stepping into the intelligence and the sustainability side. And I've always been a proponent, John, being born in a small island surrounded by water and beauty, that the world should be, we should all do what we need to do to keep the world beautiful.
That's right.
And of course, you want to leave it in the best shape possible for the next generation. So it just all kind of came together for me, what I liked and valued as a person, the ability to be mindful of resources and using data and intelligence to drive better decisions. All of that kind of got me into the energy space. And the other thing that fascinated me about energy is, what? You don't see it, right? You and I walk into a room, we flip a switch and we expect the light to come on and everything to work. But in order to maintain that, there's a lot of work that we now need to do because energy isn't always going to be accessible. Energy isn't accessible everywhere in the world. And so that's where my passion for what I'm doing came from.
That's so interesting. So how many years ago did you leave Schneider and join Prologis?
4 years ago, I made the move.
And you were named Chief Energy and Sustainability Officer when you joined? That was the role?
That's right. Yeah, that was the role.
And you were the first Chief Energy and Sustainability Officer at Prologis?
That's correct. So I had a conversation with Hamid Morgadam, who was the CEO and now the executive chairman of the board. And I think neither one of us honestly knew what the job was going to be. What I saw in Prologis was I was really impressed with the company. It was being built. It's 40 years. And by Hamid, based on his dreams and his aspirations, and I was really impressed at the scale of the company, and this Prologis touches global commerce. It touches supply chain, it touches real estate, all of which are in some sense, when you think about the built environment, it's hard to decarbonize. And when you look at what Prologis does, if you look at our emissions itself, 99.8% comes from what our customers do on premise, so hard to abate. I just thought it was a challenge, and all of the real estate, like very prime real estate in energy dense environment. I just thought, what an amazing opportunity to create an energy company. And Hamid kind of had the same vision. And now Dan Letter, who's the CEO, has that vision. So I've just been super lucky to be able to define the role that I'm in some sense.
I don't know if luck, I agree, luck plays a lot of all of our lives. But you've earned your way. I mean, come on, the roles that you've had both at McCain and for your previous education, then McCain, and then Schneider and running countries. I mean, I'm sure you had a lot of opportunities in front of you that you got to choose from when you chose this position.
You know what? I was really, really wanted to do something where I can make a meaningful impact, and I thought Prologis was the right fit.
Right.
And I'm really glad. So 4 years into it, I'm super glad I made that decision.
Talk about day one. Is it like you said, this was all new. So you were staring at that proverbial blank page, and that's terrifying and exciting at the same time. So how do you balance your history and knowledge, and then the information that you learned from the CEO, the institutional knowledge that he had of the great company that he built, and how do you meld them together to come up with a core strategy that fit for the future of Prologis?
Yeah. So day one, I want to talk to you about day one. Yeah. Having been at Schneider for 17 years, like I knew, like pretty much everyone at Schneider, they knew what I brought to the table. So there was no surprise either for me or for them, right? So if I wanted to drive a decision, wanted to drive a new investment, of course, I had the people knew what I was going to do and what I was going to deliver. You come first day into a new company and a company that where also a lot of people are long-term long-term people. Prologis has an incredible track record of retaining people. You come in and they're like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Who are you?" Right? And then you go, "Well, what do I do and who do I call?" Because I had, for the first time, I think in 17 years, kind of a blank calendar, and I was sitting there going, "Wow, this is new." So that was day one.
Wow, that's
You know,
exciting though. But that's exciting but terrifying, but very exciting for someone like you that loves challenges.
Absolutely. But what it also gave me is the space and time to think. Because sometimes, when you're doing things, you don't always have the space and time to think. So what Hamid gave me a couple of challenges, and he said, "I want you to develop the most ambitious net zero goal, and I want you to develop I want you to lead the industry in terms of what Prologis can do in the space that you can make a difference." That's really all he said to me. So what I had learned at Schneider, because we had worked with many customers, multinational customers, on their decarbonization strategy and journey. And I know that if you develop a strategy that's a parallel strategy to the business strategy, you're not going to really succeed. What you do has to make sense for the core of what the business does. So the first thing that I did was to develop the strategy on net zero, which is, how do we decarbonize our existing portfolio, and how do we build differently so that we're future proofing our assets, right? Because with what you do, you want to accomplish a number of things. You want to make sure that you stand apart in the market, that you stand for the quality of what Prologis is known for, and you want to build it in the most efficient way from a cost standpoint, because no one is going to give you capital freely to go say, "Hey, I want you to save the world, go do it." So what I wanted to do was to generate green revenues that could also help decarbonize. And in what we were doing, I wanted us the portfolio of Prologis building to be a differentiator in the marketplace. So, again, now looking back at it in hindsight, I'm really glad that I married it to the core of the business. So when you build buildings with less emissions, and you do that in the best way possible from a cost-effective standpoint, you have a lot of people working with you. So I'm very happy about that. And I'm really, really happy on the net zero goal. So, in a nutshell, our goal is to be net zero in our operations, everything that we control, by 2030. And we also had a goal of getting to 1 gigawatt of on-site energy generation at Prologis sites supported by storage. And you will find out very soon if we got to that goal. And I'm smiling, so that kind of tells you something. And that was an ambitious goal. So I'm very happy to have set that ambitious goal. And we are tracking well to get to net zero in our operation, which is how we power the buildings that we own, lease, whatnot, and any of the vehicles that we own and operate on behalf of Prologis. And then we have made significant progress on our Scope 3 decarbonization. So this is on the activities that our customers are doing on our premises. And this has really allowed us to work very closely with our customers and to provide value-added services for them. So I'm going to pause there.
Well, let's follow on that. You have over 6,700 customers around the world. What are they asking for? So you talked a little bit about the materiality. You were way ahead of the game. You created material solutions that were in line with Prologis's mission and goals.
Yes.
Now let's look up, like you just said, let's look at through the other lens. How do you serve your clients better? What have you found over the last 4 years that they're asking you for that you're able to then take action on?
So first, I have to note that the dialogue, even though it's been only 4 years, has been evolving and changing.
Okay.
Which really speaks to the dynamic environment that we are functioning in today. Second, those asked by customers are different based on geography. So today, the predominant conversation centers around energy security, right? That was not the conversation I was having with most of the customers 4 years ago.
That's right.
So people want to make sure that they can have the level of power that they want to in the US. And that makes absolute sense with the energy demand outpacing supply and AI being it's accelerating the use of AI, the want of AI. So that makes a lot of sense. So I am really happy that we built the global capability to deploy generation of energy that we had. The second request that I get a lot is from major multinational companies or companies that are very beholden to their decarbonization of sustainability goals on give me clean energy, help me decarbonize, build, can you help us build buildings that are lower in embodied carbons? And embodied carbon, as you may know, comes from the steel and cement that we use. So we have we have partnership discussions or we have partnerships with cement manufacturers, steel manufacturers like ArcelorMittal on how are they thinking about lower carbon steel and cement and can we then deploy them in our buildings and ensure the performance of the buildings that we are used to. We partner with MIT on their climate consortium, and we test a lot of our solutions, the new solutions in their labs. We do the same with Stanford in terms of what are the new technologies for energy generation. Mainspring, which is a startup off of Stanford, produces linear generators that we use to generate power when grid power is not available. So really, my customers are asking for energy security, decarbonization, innovation when we can get to grid power.
You bring up a great point. I want to lean in a little bit to what you were just referring to, Susan, with regards to collaboration. It seems as though gone are the days of the winner take all mentality. Of course, we have so many iconic and wonderful entrepreneurs to point to that have helped make the world a better place. Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk. There's so many wonderful people, both in North America and around the world. But I think what you're just pointing out and sharing with us, which I think is really so important as a woman who's been a leader before, CEO of different countries and brands in countries, and now is in a very big role at Prologis, that collaboration is really, the world is no longer a zero-sum game. And that if you really want to make the fastest and the biggest and most long-standing impacts, you've got to learn to get along. So you've got to learn to collaborate and be reciprocal in your collaboration. So look at all the brands you just mentioned that you're collaborating with to achieve your goals and your clients' goals. And it sounds like a wonderful chemistry of like-minded people and like-minded brands that come together with your leadership to create great solutions that make big impacts.
John, I couldn't have said it better than what you just said. I think that what the world is facing today in terms of the sheer demand for energy, as well as the climate challenge that we have in front of us, and it's real, right? It has real cost to businesses, wildfires. I mean, we don't have to debate that. And both are just too big. They're too big a problem for one person or one company to solve. Right. So it is in our best interest to collaborate. And I and Prologis very much, we take that approach. And we also, when you look at Prologis, the world's largest developer of logistics real estate. And we with that scale, we've got a responsibility to lead. And you can't lead by holding everything to yourself. That's the philosophy of the leaders in our company. And that's very much my philosophy. So I'm always encouraging people whether it's other companies that we work with closely. We collaborate a lot with Walmart. We collaborated a lot with a number of different people, and I try to figure out if you can put more brains working together, we will always get to a better solution.
For our listeners and viewers that have just joined us, we've got Susan Uthayakumar with us. She's the Chief Energy and Sustainability Officer at Prologis. To find Susan and her colleagues and all the wonderful impacts they're making in sustainability and energy, please go to www.prologis.com. It will be in the show notes that you don't have to stop doing what you're doing right now to write anything down, but all of the information on how to reach out to Prologis and to collaborate potentially with Susan and a great team will be in the show notes. Susan, talk a little bit more specifically about these solutions. Historically, concrete has been one of those big sustainability thorns in the side, for lack of better terms. Talk a little bit about the evolution now of recycled concrete, green concrete, low carbon concrete, and some that even are doing things like self-healing floors and things that sound so science fiction, but have become realities now. Talk a little bit about more of these amazing collaborations that you're in the middle of.
Absolutely. So concrete is the biggest thing that you need to solve for when you want to decarbonize a building. Right. And it first starts with using less, right? It always goes back to the common sense of using less. So we spend a lot of time in terms of how can we optimize our design? That's number one. And number two, we think about, well, what are substitute materials that we can use? We do timber, for example. It doesn't always work everywhere. There's other concrete like material that we use to strengthen the performance or to use less of, like Pozzolan, for example. So we use all these different techniques in terms of how can we bring down the embodied carbon. And we have a goal. So every year we say, you know what? So for example, last year we wanted to reduce the embodied carbon in our buildings that we're going to build. We build about 40 million square feet per year globally by 10%. So we set challenging goals for ourselves. That's the first anchor. The second thing is, as I mentioned earlier, we collaborate with the likes of Hoshim, for example. They have their own goal to decarbonize their manufacturing of cement. So we work with them on the solutions that they have. One such concept is slab, so that once you build something, and if you want to rebuild or if you want to reuse, you can literally it's like blocks you can take apart and move to a different location. So it has a much longer life. We tested that solution at the MIT Climate Consortium lab. The other thing that we do, and you just touched on it, the self-healing concrete. This has been an obsession of mine. If the Roman concrete, if you look at in history, it was self-healing. People couldn't figure out what they did. But if you look at Pantheon and the dome that they have, it has been built, I don't know how many years ago. I wish I remembered it, but it is the original structure. Like imagine, right? So in one of our facilities in the Netherlands, Warwick, we have self-healing concrete.
That's crazy. That sounds wild to me. How does that work even? How does that happen?
Oh my gosh, I wish I can tell you the technical solution. It has something to do with actually using bacterial spores that are that form to correct the cracks. I think I have smarter people than me working at the company, but it really does heal. I was so excited that we were able to do that.
Is that going to become less of an anomaly and more of a norm in the future, do you believe?
I think we have a little bit of time before we can get that to be the norm. But you know what? A while ago, people couldn't figure out how to do it. What I'm excited about is all of this innovation that's happening. Now, the next challenge is, okay, we've got the innovation. Now, how do you scale it in a cost-effective way? That's where the challenge is.
Do some of these brands that you work with, because of that exact challenge, of scalability and commercial viability, do they then turn around and say, you love our solution, Susan, for the issue that you came to us for? Yeah. Can you now invest in us to help make it scalable or more commercially viable? Does that happen?
It does happen. It doesn't happen with the very large companies like the Holcim, which is the world's largest cement producer. But it does happen with new technology companies, right? And that's why we have Prologis Ventures that does take stake in new technology companies, startups that do require the funding.
Are they coming to you, the ventures, asking any great companies you're talking to, or do they come to you and say, hey, we're talking to this company. Is this something that you could use? Is there a constant dialogue between you and the ventures division?
It's a constant dialogue between us and the ventures division. So sometimes, because they're in the market looking for these new technologies, and they look at it through the lens of what will improve supply chain, what will improve the built environment, and what will improve the energy space and the energy systems. And so sometimes they bring those forward to us, or other times I would bring them, or my team will bring that forward to them saying, hey, we're testing this solution. So one where they brought the solution to us is solar recycle, which is when you put a lot of panels on the roof, you want to be able to recycle those. Those are the company that focuses just on that, which really allows me to think about sustainability from end to end when I deploy on-site generation.
Understood. Talk a little bit about you mentioned the self-healing cement in the Netherlands. As we discussed earlier, you have 20 countries that you serve. You have over 2,700 employees. You have over 6,700 clients. You're in a very big position managing a lot of continents, Susan. Talk a little bit about the challenges of the different laws, rules, regulations that are still ever evolving, but how much is that part of the challenge of what you do with your team, harmonizing all the rules and regulations so it makes sense for Prologis? And when will the world get more harmonized from a governmental and regulatory perspective to make your job easier so you can focus on more material issues rather than managing this patchwork quilt of regulations that exist right now around the world?
Yeah, well, John, I think if I could predict when the world will harmonize, I'd be really smart, and I will probably be doing additional things. I don't know that we will get to a harmonized solution, but what I do know is, so we're in 20 countries. In the last 3.5 years, because it took me 6 months to get my strategy straight, we are now operating in a number of states. When I deploy energy systems, it also has to make economic sense. So I'm not operating everywhere in the United States, but I'm operating in significant number of states.
Right.
We are now deploying in 12 countries in Europe. We are present in Brazil, Mexico, Singapore, Japan, and we are assessing India and China. So that tells you the scale of what we've built.
Wow.
So we have the global capability. So I have talent in each of these regions or countries to really understand what you need to do from a regulatory standpoint. Europe is very different from the US. I can't, deploy it the same way. So first and foremost, I think when you're dealing with the global footprint, you have to really be local in the approach of how you're doing business. And I've always kind of known that, from my previous work experience, and I don't know that will change. However, what you are able to do, though, from a technology standpoint, right? I just spoke about linear generation earlier. That knowledge base is transferable across the globe. So we share knowledge base where we can, and we stay local in terms of regulation as we need to be. The market dynamics are also different. I would tell you that Europe is very much driven by policy and climate disclosures and decarbonization requirement. For customers there, clean energy is table stakes. They're not going to come into your facility if you don't have it. You also need to understand how regulation is changing. So in Europe, there is a regulation that now says if you are a commercial property and you're over 250 square meters or larger, you must have solar on your roof. It's not a choice. It's a requirement. So, I need to understand what the requirements locally are. And I'm lucky enough to have the knowledge base and the ecosystem to have that, so that I know what I need to do in each of the countries. In the US, it's very much driven by the requirement of the customers in terms of energy, whether it's clean energy, it's power augmentation, resiliency, or it is the decarbonization goal of that specific customer or the returns, right? It's not really driven by policy, especially now, I would say. Mexico and Brazil are, again, different markets. There, the resiliency issue, the access to power and making sure you have continuity of power drives a lot of the discussion. And John, I have to tell you that maybe harmonized ecosystem would make all our lives and easier and maybe more predictable. But I have to tell you, I love the challenge of figuring out each of the markets and how do you best operate in it.
Which brings me to my next point. When the founder of Prologis hired you, he didn't hire you, Susan, just for your energy background, your sustainability knowledge, your engineering, your love for engineering, but I bet he hired you because you were a proven leader. So what has gone not the way you expected during the last 4 years? Because that also is why you sit in the position you sit. You were already a tried and true, proven leader. How do you deal with the challenges that are new, fresh, and unexpected that come your way on a regular basis?
Yeah, I have been very lucky in that I've had the opportunity to do multiple jobs. At Schneider, I changed jobs every 2 to 3 years because, you were put in training. If you're going to go lead a division, they're going to train you.
Right.
And I am so thankful for those rotations, because what you literally have to do is you have to always enter something that you don't know, a market you don't know, partners that you don't know, and you have to figure it out, and you're operating different jurisdiction. And so if you look at the last 4 years, think about what's happened in the energy space, right? Think about the changes in terms of tax incentives that do make the economics work or not, the sentiment around distributed energy. Then you think about the supply impact of data center power loads, etc. So it has been the most dynamic space in the 4 years. It's crazy. I used to say 10 years ago, if Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison came in, one would say, my gosh, if everything is the same. And if in Alexander Graham Bell will say, what's happened? But now energy is in the same space. It's changing so much. So you're absolutely right. You have to be able to keep a level head as the environment changes, as new challenges come across, and you have to kind of figure out what steps do you need to take, and what is the long-term vision you are beholden to, and how do you pace to the market or the changes and make those tough decisions and calls. So yeah.
It's so interesting. I get to say this because I'm third generation Armenian immigrant, and you're first generation. But I feel when I've talked to other friends of mine and acquaintances and just folks you get to meet along the way in this fascinating journey of life, I always fall back on my default position that for some reason, those who have immigrant DNA that goes through their veins are flexible, resilient, and they really make great leaders at the end of the day. And so I think the same for you, because you're a global citizen. You lived so an amazingly rich life in so many fascinating cultures, and you've worked in many of those same areas. And again, over and over again, as new challenges have come your way, you've again proved your resilience and flexibility. And you're able to lead your teams through those things. So I think that's just so fascinating to hear your position on what what you've been doing the last 4 years and why you had the skill set to do it. And all those rotations at Schneider obviously were an amazingly enriching experience as well.
Absolutely. The rotations at Schneider and then building something from scratch, I would say, it
Right.
really makes you're gonna encounter obstacles. And to your point, I referenced earlier that everything is a reference point, and my reference point is always the decision that my parents had to make to leave a country that they knew, where they were super comfortable and, they thought they were going to live their lives, is my reference point. That decision is much tougher than the decisions that I face today, right? And I think as human beings, you can think through and you can work through anything as long as you remain calm and you can really just kind of focus on the data point that's in front of you. And sometimes maybe the decision is a tough decision out of that data point, but ultimately you have to make a decision anyway. You cannot not make a decision.
Right. Just as a practical matter, do you? Well, first of all, I agree with what you just said in terms of starting something from scratch. You had that proverbial white page. So really, what the founder was asking you to do is to create an entrepreneurial subdivision within Prologis. So you were an entrepreneur, basically an in-house entrepreneur, creating an entrepreneurial venture inside of Prologis, which has now become this very material, energy and sustainability division, which is fascinating to me. Talk about, do you produce an annual sustainability energy report that's up on your website?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we produce a global impact and sustainability report, and actually, I'd be very happy to share that with you because I think it's an interesting read.
Please.
And we are very mindful of setting our goals so that it's ambitious for us, right? And we're very proud when we accomplish that. So I will share that with you for sure.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the show notes. We'll link to it so that way all our listeners and viewers can find it really easily. What besides all your energy and sustainability positive impacts that you've created, what other impacts in the communities? Because like you said, business at the end of the day, although it's global in what you're doing, it is very local as well. How do you positively impact the local communities that you have your real estate in?
So, our philosophy is that if we're somewhere in a community, that community should benefit from us being there. So the first one that I'm really proud of is our workforce initiative, which means that we train people to be able to work in the space of supply chain. And to date, we've trained 36,000 people since 2018. Wow. And this is something that we will continue to do and accelerate as we move forward. We provide green spaces. So we know obviously our buildings are very large, and we provide park life and green spaces for the community to enjoy. And we do a lot of community solar. So with the intent that we are able to bring clean energy at a lower cost to those communities that most need it. So, and along with that, we do a lot of work with a foundation. So what I would say to you, John, is that our philosophy at Prologis is to do what is right and to be wanted in the community, right? Like create value for the community so that the community benefits from us being there.
And they're happy to have you. They're happy to have you.
Yeah.
There's not a day that you and I can read whatever our daily news diet is, or turn on Bloomberg or any other great news platform and not hear the words AI. How is AI helping you achieve the goals that you and your colleagues have created at Prologis, especially when it comes to energy and sustainability and impact?
So, we are very, I think we are adopters of AI at Prologis. I mean, I do so many things in terms of analytics, in terms of writing using AI. So it's kind of just is embedded in our organization. That's number one. Number two, we're starting to really think about how can we make better decisions. So site selection, for example, right? Can we use AI to drive site selection? So we are adapting those. Can we do AI to better manage the energy consumptions of our buildings? So that's in the formation space of what we're doing. The second thing is AI obviously drives demand for real estate as well. And we, given our experience with real estate, given our ability to bring both energy, real estate, and those things together, we are going to be a major participant in terms of building the buildings that are needed for AI.
Got it. Prologis also has a podcast called Moving the World. And we're going to link to that in our show notes for any of our listeners and viewers that want to listen to your wonderful podcast. What can people learn to expect what can they learn from this podcast if they tune in? Because we're putting it into our show notes. So we want people to listen to it, obviously.
I would tell you that Prologis, I've been here 4 years, right? The first thing that struck me is how innovative and entrepreneurial the company is. I mean, we're a very large public company. The company moves at speeds that is amazing from where I stand. Okay, I'm a little bit biased now, but I was new 4 years ago. Business innovation, technology innovation, the way we build buildings, the way we look around the corners. So that's what audiences can expect. How are we thinking differently? What are we doing differently? What new technologies that we're using, and what's the new business innovation that we're driving?
I love it. Susan, I just want to say thank you for spending some time with us today. For our listeners and viewers that want to find Susan and her colleagues and all the great work they're doing at Prologis, please go to www.prologis.com. We'll also put a copy of their annual sustainability report. We'll link that in our show notes, and we're going to, of course, link Moving the World in our show notes as well. Susan, thanks not only for the hour, the enlightening and inspirational hour you spent with us today on the Impact Podcast, but more important, thank you and your colleagues for making the world a better place.
Thank you, John. It was really a pleasure to have this conversation.
This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent, for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com.